In Greece, 2 firefighters have died battling forest fires on the island of Crete. Their deaths come as emergency services battle unprecedented wildfires in Spain and in France. Earlier on Wednesday, the head of the EU's Emergency Response Centre warned that Greece, Italy, and Central Europe are set to face heightened wildfire risk in the coming weeks. She said that the ongoing heat wave could create more blazes in Spain and France, but urged countries to the east to prepare for imminent disasters.
In southwestern France, tens of thousands of hectares of charred forest and scorched countryside. While the fire has been stabilised for 3 consecutive nights, officials warn it's not yet under control, and it's a massive operation.
More than 2,200 firefighters are still deployed on the ground, with what I would call institutional diversity. Almost all of France's firefighters are there. Our European counterparts have come to lend us a hand on the ground and in the air. We have a fleet of over 20 aircraft. The strategy remains the same. We strike quickly and strike hard at any sign of new smoke.
The army has been called in to assist. Local volunteers are doing their bit too.
We're trying to flood the edges so it doesn't reignite. It prevents the firefighters from having to come back and waste time.
In neighbouring Spain, the wildfires have burned huge swathes of the countryside. The government lifted evacuation orders on more than a dozen municipalities. While some people returned to their intact homes, others confronted scenes of devastation.
This disaster is impossible to bear. I have no money. I have no papers. I have nothing left from my home.
Spain's Prime Minister said that there were still several remaining active fires, but he was optimistic.
The situation continues to be favourable whilst exercising the utmost prudence, the utmost caution and taking every possible precaution.
While more favourable weather conditions on Tuesday night helped crews keep the fires stable, the fear is that the coming heat wave and forecast strong winds could again worsen the blazes.
DW correspondent Rosie Birchard is close to the French city of Bordeaux and sent us this update.
So this is exactly what firefighters had feared. Here there was a fire that had been extinguished and now is back raging again. You'll see this big plume of smoke above us. When we got here, everything was calm, and really just in the space of about 20 minutes, this fire has just whipped right back up again. Temperatures have been soaring. We're right now in the middle of a heat wave, up to 40 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit in this region. Humidity has dropped and the winds have picked up, and all that makes for perfect conditions for these fires to spread further again. So the firefighters here and the volunteers who are helping them seem very motivated. They tell us they've got one track on their mind, which is to keep people safe and to try and battle these blazes. But of course, it's very physically intensive work. It's very difficult, and they're getting very, very little rest. One firefighter told us 3 hours is something you can only dream of. 2 hours is more like what they're getting at most now. More than 100 firefighters have been injured in these efforts so far, and sadly, 3 have also died in this region.
What does it feel like on the front line of France's fight against some of its worst ever wildfires? DW's own Rosie Birchard met with fire crews and volunteers battling the flames in the Gironde region near Bordeaux.
This is what life looks like on the front line of France's fight against wildfires. Firefighters are exhausted, but there's no time to stop as a new heatwave hits.
We're working day and night with little rest to hold back these fires and tackle possible new flare-ups.
This is very, very physically intensive work, and it is very, very hot, up to 40 degrees Celsius on Wednesday. That's more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
More than 2,000 firefighters from France and nearby countries are on the ground in the Gironde region. Over 100 have been injured and 4 have lost their lives. The battle has now reached a critical juncture as humidity drops. Marine firefighter Julien takes us through evacuated areas near the most active fires.
Look at that. All of this is already burned. But you see, there's still wisps of smoke here and there, and we absolutely have to douse those so fires don't restart.
When we get there, we see it with our own eyes.
When we arrived here, everything was calm, and really just in the space of about 20 minutes, the fire has just whipped right back up there behind us. This is as far as we can go now for our safety.
Local volunteers are on the scene here, bringing water to help firefighters battle the blaze. They too are on the edge after days of tireless work, and many don't feel properly appreciated.
I got my family to safety, and on Saturday I came here and haven't slept since. My daughter was evacuated from Le Porge with flames around her.
That must be difficult.
I'm sorry.
Nurse Laetitia, a marine firefighter herself, is here to make sure teams on the ground have what they need to soldier on.
We're attentive but not intrusive. We try to see if there's a dip in morale. It's the fatigue. They're sleeping very, very little.
Temperatures are due to drop over the weekend, which might provide some reprieve. But it can take months to fully extinguish fires like these. And scientists say climate change is making them much more frequent.
This report by DW's Rosie Birchard, who joins me now for more. Rosie, firefighters are working tirelessly, but we saw in your report that things can turn around any minute. How far is the situation from being under control?
They really can turn around any minute. Even just since we've been here preparing to speak to you, Nicole, we saw smoke starting to peel up behind us there. So I wouldn't be surprised if before long firefighters are on the scene here too, or at least some local volunteers. Now, there has been some good news over the past 24 hours in this wildfire. 60,000 people, roughly, have been able to return to their homes, and the surface which has been scorched by these wildfires remains at around 42,000 hectares. Now, that is really sizable. It's about 4 times the size of Paris, but that hasn't expanded. However, really key caveat there, because what has happened is that some of the areas which were already burned have seen fires restart, exactly what we saw in that report. And that means that officials are telling us that the situation is stabilising, but yet far from fixed.
There has been a groundswell of public volunteering. What role do people from the area play in battling the blazes?
Such a crucial role. We heard from firefighters that they just simply could not do their work without these volunteers, especially farmers who've been coming with their own vehicles, the likes of tractors, bringing water from fire hydrants to the firefighters so they can get into these flames and try and tackle them. Now, what it really should be noted as well is that really not all those volunteers feel their work has been recognised. We've seen some of them who are pretty distressed, and of course they're the ones who are very personally impacted because they're trying to do this work while also being concerned in many cases about their own homes or about their livelihoods. It's not just volunteers on kind of the front line of this battle. We've also spoken to groups of retired people, so older people who are making sure that firefighters have food and can rest in a sort of coordination hub where we've also been able to work as press. And we've also spoken to volunteers who are going out to make sure that animals are rescued from these blazes, or that those which might be staying can access food. So people are really coming together here, and I think the firefighters that we've spoken to say they feel very touched by that and very supported.
We're just seeing pictures of this huge wildfire. What do we know about what caused this massive blaze?
Well, we can talk about the specifics of the cause first of all. The clues for now point to an accident at the start, at the origin of this fire. So there is a suspicion or thought that it started at some sort of construction site along a road, so where teams were using streamers to actually try and cut back vegetation, and the machines led to some of the vegetation catching fire and then spreading further on. However, to note, some people have been taken in for questioning over allegedly dangerous behaviour linked to the spread of this fire.
But then, let's zoom out, because of course we can talk about the much bigger context here and the bigger causes of this fire. Scientists are telling us that climate change is turbocharging Europe's wildfire season, and we really saw the impacts of the climate here when the temperature just rocketed right up here on Wednesday in the Gironde region, and that made not only for a pretty flammable, in the literal sense, environment, but it also made life just so much more difficult for these firefighters. They are just people like you and me, so when it is 40 degrees Celsius, that's above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it's just more difficult to get your work done. They are wearing very heavy suits, they are sweating, and they really are going into this. They are using kind of the language of war when they speak to them. They talk about a fight here, they talk about a kind of David and Goliath style battle, but they say their morale remains high as they're trying to keep with that clear objective, which is to keep people safe.
How big are fears right now that this oncoming heat wave might worsen the situation again?
Well, it already has worsened the situation. We talked about the impact on the firefighters themselves, but we've also seen fires starting again in several places around this region. So we've seen the impact of that heat already, really, when in terms of the actual flammable material on the ground. And I think it's worth knowing that the peak of that intense heat, it has now passed. The temperatures are forecasted to diminish over the next few days, but it still will remain pretty hot here. We're forecasting about 28 degrees Celsius for tomorrow, so that is a dip significantly, but it's still very hot. It means that the work will continue to be very difficult for these firefighters, and blazes like this just do not get put out overnight. Until they can be declared fully extinguished, that really can be months sometimes.
Yeah. Both France and Spain, where wildfires are also raging, will be holding important elections next year. As far as you're concerned, how much is this contributing to the politicization of these fires?
You can be sure it's a very politically charged environment in both of these countries ahead of those elections. Whenever people feel they have been failed by the state, that can obviously lend some support to the opposition. So you can be sure that politicians are also watching this very carefully. We've seen French President Emmanuel Macron coming to this region to try and speak to the population to say, we stand by your side. Tomorrow we're expecting the European Commissioner who deals with crisis management to come here. There has been a lot of pan-European support for France in its fight against wildfires, also for Spain. There have been German teams on the ground here, help from Switzerland, other countries including Czechia and Sweden, also in terms of technical support and equipment. And so those currently in power will be trying to stress that they feel like they have the kind of the matter in hand here. They acknowledge that mistakes may have been made, but they're trying to move forward. But certainly I think you can expect a really deep and heated political debate, perhaps after the really hot and intense fight against these fires has ebbed away, and there can be a bit more of soul searching done, I think, especially about the role of climate change here, because that, of course, climate policies have really fallen out of vogue in Europe in recent years.
DW correspondent Rosie Birchard, thanks so much for your reporting, Rosie.